Hey guys, I'm Taylor.
And I'm Shannon.
And you're listening to Nefarious.
We are two 911 night shift dispatchers that decided to give our perspective on cases and events that happen before and after the emergency call. We cope with difficult situations, calls, and life with dark humor. We mean no disrespect. Our intentions are always to research and present information correctly and truthfully.
Warning. The audio you're about to hear is intended for mature audiences. Listener discretion is advised.
Yes, hello. I think the guy is attacked my neighbor.
You think someone attacked your neighbor? What's your friend's name?
I don't know her name, but she's my neighbor and she lives in a 105.
She lives in apartment 105?
Right. I'm in 106 Harbor View. 123 Harbor View.
126 Harbor View.
123 Harbor View. I saw a guy go into her apartment.
Okay.
I thought you already opened yours. I was behind this song. Okay. So she gave, it was very, very quick, obviously.
Very quick call.
But she gave, a couple different addresses. It was very odd, I think.
It's a very short call. I have nothing to go off of.
Yeah, it's very, very quick. And honestly,
She said someone was attacking her neighbor. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
She said a man went in there and, was attacking her neighbor or something like that.
Okay.
So, I'm going to tell you about Sheila Davalloo.
How do you find these names?
Every time, I'm like, where is, Jones and Anderson and,
Wallace.
Martin?
Yeah.
Easy names, right? Okay. I'm sorry. I literally was looking at this case and I was like, God, Shannon's going to be like, why are you pick these? So, Sheila Davalloo was born on May 11th, 1969 in Charlottesville, Virginia.
Okay. So, relatively local.
In locals.
It's the same state.
It's not the meaning of local.
It's like an hour and a half away, I think.
Charlottesville?
I used to go to games up there. We used to have UVA tickets.
Softball, I assume?
Football.
Oh.
I watched softball.
I thought you played softball.
No, I played volleyball.
You seem like a softball.
Have we met?
You seem like a
Is that a
softball.
lesbian reference?
You drive a Subaru.
Not anymore. I drive a truck, which doesn't help. A big truck.
I don't know where the map is to look how far. Nope. Look how far up. Is it up?
It is up. We're on the North Carolina border, so everything's up.
It is 3 hours away.
I drink a lot.
It says 240 some hours. Nope.
That's Canada. That's possibly north of Canada.
It's 240. No, God. I swear. I'm sorry.
240 miles?
It's 2 hours and 40 minutes. It's 2 hours and 40 minutes. Anyways.
We did not drive that slow. It was maybe an hour 45.
But y'all are already still 30-ish minutes away from me. So.
I'm a little bit north of you, so that makes sense.
Okay, so softball and Subarus. Anyways. She was... She was... Okay.
Sure.
She was born May 11th, 1969 in Charlottesville, Virginia. She was around 2 years old when her parents moved them back to their home country, which was Iran. Why are you looking at me like that?
Was not where I saw this conversation going at all. I got nothing from the call, and now I'm back to Iran in 1969.
No!
71.
She was 2.
71.
Oh, math is hard.
Math is hard.
Mitigath. Okay, yeah, so, she was 2 years, so sorry. She was 2 years old, and they moved back to Iran. And when she was 10, the country, what?
10?
She was
Sorry.
10.
Okay.
She was 10, and, why are you laughing?
Just the way you said that, sorry.
What is it?
10.
10.
10.
10. A 10 is where you put the cookies in for Christmas.
That's a 10. I bought one of those
What are
today.
we saying differently?
I bought a 10 today. I don't know
10.
why I'm off.
A 10?
10. T-I-N.
Why are you saying it like that? A 10.
Because it's a metal.
10.
10.
That's like tan.
Nope, tan is, well...
Not me.
You're pale.
Fuck you. Okay. So sorry. When she was 10 years old, the country was in... I'm so fucked up when I say it in the sentence now. When she was 10, the country was in the midst of a war. So, very nice.
Yeah.
It lasted for like a little over a year, I believe. But when she was about 17, like they still had to like deal with all like the repercussions and the turmoil and all that from the war itself. So when she was 17, her parents decided it would be best for them to move back and flee the Middle East and move back to the United States. They ended up moving to New York a few years later.
Okay.
Well, when she was 17, so I guess a few years.
Gotcha.
So, she moved to New York. I don't know where. I can't remember. And she was 19, and her parents arranged a marriage for her because she was Iranian, and like that's common. Right? Yeah. Exactly. Her parents arranged a marriage to a Farid Mousavi. I'm so sorry. I don't know. Why can't it just get like a Bob?
There are no Bobs. There are no Bob Smiths in your stories ever.
Farid Mousavi. I'm totally butchering that, I'm sure. And so when she was 19, they ended up getting married. Anyways, Sheila's parents were in the healthcare field, and Sheila was intelligent as fuck. Like, super smart. Like, crazy smart, okay?
A healthcare field is already outside of my realm of knowledge.
Well, that her parents grew up in that. So then she ended up she wanted to like follow in their footsteps, obviously, and more specifically into pharmaceuticals. So that's why she was getting her bachelor's in biochemistry.
Wow.
Yeah, it's like super smart.
Yeah.
And so fast forward to 1994, she's in grad school and she's attending New York Medical College. And she meets a fellow student named Paul Christos.
Okay.
Okay, so we have Farid and we have Paul.
She's already married at this point.
Yeah, she's married to Farid.
Okay.
And that was at 19. And she was 19, so math is hard.
1969 plus 19. Sure. 1988.
Sure.
Yeah.
You're doing research for me. Anyways. She met the fellow student named Paul Christos. They immediately hit it off and started dating, if you will.
Okay, you're married, ma'am, but sure.
So they dated for about a year.
I don't think even in their religion that polygamy is allowed,
Yeah.
but I don't know. It's frowned upon at the very least.
So they hit it off and they started dating for about a year. One day, Sheila's husband, Farid, calls her phone and Paul answers. Paul obviously is like, ha.
Yeah.
Like, what are you talking about?
Who dis?
Who did? Who dis? And they agree to meet for coffee. Nope. They agree to meet for coffee.
It's like, are they going to Kinko's for a date?
Xerox. It was super, like, chill, amicable, if you will.
Yeah.
That kind of, sort of.
It's a coffee date.
Whatever. So, Paul obviously had no idea she was married during the meetup, and he was apologetic, and basically was like, hey man, I had no idea. So, Farid was basically like, okay, cool, you can have her. Like, she yours.
Right.
Bye. And
good on him, though.
Right.
Sure.
Paul was hesitant to continue the relationship. I mean, since obviously she lied the entire time.
Right.
But I think Farid being like, hey, you can have her, like, it kind of made more sense because she ended up explaining about the arranged marriage portion and stuff like that. I never ended up reading anyone else saying it was arranged other than Sheila. So, but
it would, I guess, be more understandable if it was, because I don't we're not in that realm. So we don't really know, like, arranged marriages and stuff. But it's not the meet cute, fall in love, happily ever after story that I guess our Western civilization's used to. Like, with arranged marriages, you just get who you get based on status or however they choose your husband for you, families or whatever.
Right.
So, okay.
So, Sheila ended up explaining the arranged marriage, and I guess they were just like, cool. She was convincing. So, they dated for like 8 years after that, and in 2000, after graduation, they got married. So, neither here nor there.
Okay.
Sheila landed a job as a research scientist at Purdue Pharmacy in Stamford, Connecticut.
Okay.
You don't recognize that?
I do.
Where's that from?
Previous case.
Who is that? Travis.
The nope.
Chimp.
The chimpanzee.
Yes. So, Purdue Pharmacy is like a very high up, well-known pharmaceutical company, if you will. So she got that in Stamford, Connecticut, and Paul was a professor at a college in New York and was working towards his PhD. So they kind of moved in the middle, and they moved to Westchester County, New York, to kind of have a house in between both of their jobs, so their commutes, but the commutes were still pretty long each way.
Yeah.
So basically life happened. After 8 years, they got married and all that jazz, and they started to drift apart, which is common with a lot of people, especially when like they're career oriented and stuff like that, which is go team, go sports. Like, I don't care. Working, school, hardly seeing each other. Sheila described it as more like a roommate kind of situation, like a feel. So in the fall of 2001, Sheila had told Paul her brother Shaheen, who was mentally ill. I think he was schizophrenic, and she described him as schizophrenic and mentally ill, was going to come visit her.
Okay.
And basically Shaheen did not know that Sheila was married ever. Like, to
first marriage or second.
Either one. And like, it would basically make him very upset to find out. She didn't want to cause him any more stress, that sort of thing.
Okay.
And that he needed to pretty much get out of the house while he was visiting. Does that make sense?
Yeah, like don't be here until I explain it, or just don't be here at all.
No, move out.
Oh.
For days to weekends at a time. So,
okay.
He, like, I'm sure he was like, what? At first, but he was like, cool, spend time with your brother, I get it.
It's a special needs situation.
Right. So he ends up, like, moving all of his belongings and going staying with family for a few days. No clothes, no pictures, nothing. Like, they scrubbed the house clean of, like, his existence, pretty much.
That's extensive.
Yeah, so Paul was like, okay, this is bizarre, but whatever, spend time with your brother. So after this initial visit, Shaheen started to visit more and more. Each time he was having to move out days on end, and it continued for like a year. I don't know how often it was, but I mean, even so, like, if you move out,
it was
for
like
a
3 or
weekend,
4 times. Yeah.
Yeah. So it continued on for like a year, but in like March of 2003, he was like, nah, we're done. Like, this is it. Like, I'm not doing
It's time to break the news to the brother.
Yeah. Like, we can't continuously do this for the rest of our lives. And, so they basically needed something to, like, revamp their relationship and stuff. And how do most couples do that?
I'm not about to start spitting out ideas here.
Sex.
There's a lot of ways to spice up a marriage.
Basically. So that's what they're doing. They want to, like, rekindle that spark and try new things and make it more exciting and things like that. So they played a sex game.
As one does.
As one does.
And some of them are harmless.
Are they?
I don't know if this one is. This is probably not just like the dice, like, lick this, bite that.
Are we getting sponsored here?
Like, I don't know the name of the dice.
I thought it was die.
Sure, there's more than one. You're right.
Oh, okay. I was like, so sorry. I thought it was like body parts and then the action.
Die is singular. Dice is plural, right?
Hell, I don't know.
Maybe. Yeah, I'm pretty sure dice is plural. And normally there's 2. There's one for the action and one for the body.
Right.
Sure.
I'm new here. I don't know. I'm innocent and pure.
Bullshit.
Mother Teresa, if
Everything
you
I learned from you.
will. No, you did not. Lies. Okay. Anyways, most couples start some kinky stuff. So, we don't kink shame. Roll on.
Well,
Well,
it depends on what it is.
we're talking about,
We said we didn't kink
show
shame,
business.
and then all of a sudden, show business is decapitating people, and I judged a little
with
bit.
the erotic asphyxiation. That was
Yeah.
the first episode, folks. Anyways, so they wanted to play this sex game, which was basically they sit in a chair, get blindfolded and handcuffed,
Okay.
and then the other person places objects on their skin, and they try to guess what it was.
Okay.
So kind of tame. For
Like, well, we've kind of, not that, but we've had like...
we've done this. Is that what you're about to
No,
say?
no. But remember like the box thing we have where like you put your hand in the box and you touch stuff
Yeah. Okay.
and try to figure out what it is? It's like that, only on your skin.
And
like-
sexual.
Like you dragging a knife down someone's forearm. Yeah.
It's insane that you just said that.
Oh, shit.
Like, I can't even say shout out to. Anyways, so Sheila went first. She was blindfolded and tied up, and they started to touch, or he rather started to touch objects to her. I think he had like a remote. He put it on her face, stuff like that. Right.
Seems mild, but sure.
After her turn was over, she handcuffed Paul, blindfolded him, and she touched him with a few items, and then suddenly Paul felt a sharp thrust into his chest. And he was like, basically, oh shit, like, you know.
Right.
She was like, it was an accident. Well, about that time, he feels that same sensation over again. So, twice. She removed his blindfold, and he saw blood. And he asked to be uncuffed, and Sheila claimed she couldn't find the key, so he begged her to call 911.
I feel like there are predetermined rules that are there for a reason. So, blood play is one thing. Knife play is one thing.
Mm-hmm.
Don't judge either one of those. This sounds more like a penetrating stab wound
To his chest.
to his chest.
Yeah.
That's not on my bingo card. I, like, knife down the forearm, fine.
Oh my God.
That's fine. But don't stab me.
Right.
You have to have these ground rules
And
for...
your safe words and things like that.
Yeah.
So, and also, have you ever watched Gerald's Game?
Yes.
That, to me, why is the key over there?
They didn't think this through. Once again, lack of communication.
No one-
lack of planning.
Everyone. So that's what it reminded me of. So anyway, she couldn't find the key, right? Like, she had knife playing all wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So, she claimed she couldn't find the key, and he begged her to call 911, and so she did. She is talking to the operator, and yada yada, and about 30 minutes go by, and no one's there. Old boy's bleeding out, and is like, hey, call him back. Where are they? Like, I mean, he's just been basically stabbed twice.
30 minutes is extensive for a stab wound.
Yeah. So he's like, basically, like, call him back, like, see where they are. Stuff like that. So she called 911 again, and she asked if they were coming, but the operator said that they had other calls going on. There was, like, a lot of stuff happening. Like, she was like, hey, they're coming as fast as they can. She told Paul that.
I also get that. And I know that all calls are not first come, first serve. Like, everything's given a priority. Regardless, police, fire, rescue. It's based on need. But I would imagine that this is a stab wound with uncontrolled bleeding. Two stab wounds. Uncontrolled bleeding. This is a priority one call.
Yeah.
And I think, at least in our world, I think in any EMD world, this is a priority one.
Yeah. So she called him back, and they basically gave her, she told Paul that, like, they were busy, they were on the way, they were coming, like, blah, blah, blah.
Did she actually call?
So, however long goes by, or she's talking to the operator, and he was like, basically, let me talk to him. And she was like, she tells them that, and they say they don't want to talk to you.
No.
Yeah.
If we're not getting clear answers, we always ask to speak with someone else.
Yeah. He asked to speak to the 911 operator. She tells whoever this on the phone, and she says they do not want to talk to you. So,
Not a thing.
So, she's making a bunch of excuses, like, or whatever, and he's, like, basically begging just take me to the ER. Like, if they're coming, they're coming.
Well,
if
he's
they're
also
not,
handcuffed, so
yeah.
how does that work?
She ends up finding the key. I heard she said she breaks the chair and ends up finding the key, like, behind, under him or something along those lines. But she does end up getting him uncuffed.
Okay.
At some point. And I assume this was, like, prior to him begging to, like, go the because he begs and begs, and she was like, let's go. Throws him in the back of the car, hauls ass to the ER, basically. And she was pulling into the ER, and instead she drives past it. Like, I don't know the road, so maybe it was different.
You done made 2 suspect lefts.
Suspect. So, she drives to a remote parking lot, like, a little further down. It ended up being the psych unit, and Sheila ended up saying, like, she didn't know where she was going, and that she had been to that facility before. I don't know if it was due to her brother or her medical field.
This is early 2000s, you said?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so, like, not GPS on your phone time. Okay.
So, weird, but, whatever. He was like, hello, what are we doing? So, she gets out of the car and, like, runs around back, trying to help him out and stuff, right?
Okay.
Instead, she stabs him again.
I'm sorry. That is not in any type of, like, pre-arrival or first aid care, is to administer a third stab wound.
So, apparently just before, he saw the knife and he plunged it into his chest again. But he, I guess, got the adrenaline and yeeted out, lunged towards her, fought off her, got the knife, and threw it. Okay. And, I mean, this man's been stabbed 3 times in the fucking chest. Roll on. Like, awesome person. But he's screaming, and they're, like, the altercation is happening. Well, a group of bystanders is obviously nearby, and, I mean, it's fucking New York. And so they come over to them. Well, Sheila gets in her car and just rolls out. So, weird, right?
Very weird. Like, at no point are you trying to help this man.
Yeah. So, I guess they end up calling for help, or whoever ends up, like, trying to administer aid and, like, be there for him and stuff like that. Well, Sheila comes back, like, a couple minutes later.
Returns to the scene of the crime.
She returns to the scene of the crime.
Sure.
And gets out and tries to force Paul back into the back seat again. But the bystanders were like, nah, no.
Nope.
No. Well, about that time, the police and ambulance roll up. So they're like, cool. So ambulance loads up Paul, and the police are like, hey, you're going to have to come with us because, I mean, obviously this man is stabbed. Like, let's just go down and, like, to questions and stuff like that. Blah, blah, blah. Right? So, I will play devil's advocate again for a little bit because you know how I am.
To the person who stabbed someone 3 times.
Yeah.
Let's hear this.
So, the detectives basically thought she was guilty from the get.
Okay.
Wait, listen.
Same.
But listen, like, they thought she was guilty on just the way she was reacting. So, or lack thereof, rather, because she wasn't crying and, oh my God, where's my husband? And, like, going all over the place and stuff like that.
But, like, you and I also aren't
That's
those
exactly
people.
what I was going to say. Like, in emergent situations, we're just not that.
We're calm.
So, I would hate to assume and penalize someone over a lack of emotions in an emergent situation when, people do things every day differently. So, this to me isn't a, like, oh, she's guilty sort of thing. Because
lack of emotions, not. The fact that you told me that she stabbed him 3 times, maybe.
But did I tell you she stabbed him 3 times?
Yeah.
Kinda.
Okay.
So they told her that Paul might not make it. The knife had ended up nicking his heart, and he had a lot of internal bleeding. He was in surgery, blah, blah, blah. And so this is where they were like, she's guilty. Because after they tell her this,
Careful.
You're going to understand what I mean. So instead of her being like, oh my God, my husband, what's wrong? What did happen? Like, what's going on? She said, can someone go take care of my dogs?
I don't hate that.
Don't blame her.
No.
Like, but that's what they said.
I'm going to be here a minute.
They were like, that's suspicious. And I was like, not really. Like, I I don't necessarily just fault her for that part.
Medical people have him.
Yeah.
No one has the dog. Okay.
Yeah, so that's what I was very sad about. So, however, the stories that she began telling were just not true. It was very obvious. So Paul was conscious when he got loaded up in the ambulance, and he told her what happened, or he told the detectives, rather, or police, whoever, what had happened. Right?
She stabbed me 3 times.
Yeah.
Okay.
So she told detectives that Paul had came home from work and had like a weird wound. He had asked her to look at it, and Sheila says that blood makes her dizzy or like sicky. You know how people are with like blood and stuff.
Yeah. I've heard. I'm not that person. But.
So she said she was playing with the dog, and that's what happened. She looked at it, blah, blah, blah. Well, they said, well, tell me about the blindfold. And she got super embarrassed. So she was like, nah, and just shut down. And they asked her why she didn't call 911, and she told them that they never answered.
Well, all that's tracked. So even in early 2000s, they can tell if you dialed 911.
Yeah. So she then told another scenario and she did end up later admitting that she did contradict herself a lot during the interviews because it was just a long time. Like she was very wound up and things.
It's your story. Tell it how you want to.
Sure, lie. Tell it how you want to. So she did contradict herself in a lot of the interviews, and she said when they were playing the sex game, so she ended up admitting to it, that he had moved into the knife. And
while he's handcuffed.
Right. Like, I guess maybe like a reaction.
Forward. Okay.
So, and then the second time, she assumes it was from shock. Like.
Okay, so back up for a second. So, he's sitting in a chair, handcuffed. I'm assuming hands behind his back through the back of the chair somehow.
And let me let you know that this was a parent knife.
Oh, so like a small knife.
Very small knife.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It still can do damage.
Yes.
Obviously. But if you feel something sharp on your chest, I don't think anyone's instinct is to lean into it, which is what I guess she's describing.
She said he moved into the knife.
I'm having instant, like, thoughts of the movie Chicago, where she's like, he ran into my knife 9 times. It doesn't happen.
Maybe. But, so, she said the first time he had, like, moved into it, and he jolted, like, I guess from the shock, and moved into it the second time. So that's why it was, like, the second wound or whatever, right?
And the third?
So, well, and she basically made a point, if she wanted to kill him, why would she use a paring knife? There's butcher knives. She had plenty of opportunity to do more and inflict more damage if that was her goal. Basically.
I don't disagree with that.
Yeah.
However, I feel like there's some culpability there.
But why would you bring the knife with you?
Knife play.
But no, the knife with you to take him
to the hospital.
To the ER.
Well, that's a great question.
Right? Like,
I don't have a truck knife.
It was the same knife. That's what I'm saying.
Right. Like,
and
there are weapons in my vehicle, but it's not a kitchen knife.
Yeah. So that's where I was like, okay, sure. If this is your lie, tell it how you want to.
Maybe she panicked and just had it in her hand.
While she loaded up her grown man of a husband into the car, I don't see us just holding on to something like that. But, I mean, hey.
Maybe she put it in her pocket.
Whatever. I'm neither here nor there. So, Paul survives, which is awesome. Go team, go sports. And the detective, her name was Allison Carpenter.
Okay.
Carpenter, I think. I'm totally might be making that.
That's the easiest name you've ever had in a case. Carpenter.
I think it was Carpenter.
Like Mary Chapin Carpenter, yes.
She digs for a motive because it just didn't sit right with her. Like, the whole stories and all that. So, this made her look at, like, the call logs. I assumed to probably see why, like, 911 didn't answer and stuff like that, because that's an issue, for sure.
Of course.
And, when she sees that instead of calling 911, there were several calls made during the time frame of the stabbing to a guy named Nelson. Or, maybe not, let me not assume, it's to a Nelson.
Who the fuck is Nelson?
So, they did some old-fashioned investigative work. They called her work, which is Purdue Pharmacy, and said, hey, we just talked to a Nelson there, didn't catch his last name, we need it for our records. They gave it to him. So this is how they find old boy, who is named Nelson Sessler.
Okay.
Him and Sheila had been dating on and off.
Oh my god.
had been dating on and off for about a year.
She's not built for commitments, what I'm hearing.
So Sheila and Nelson had been dating on and off for a year, and they were explaining how Sheila had stabbed her husband. And he was like, I beg your finest pardon. Because he had no idea she was married. None. And they've been dating on and off for a year. So, like, you would think you would...
Well, I mean, it makes sense because the stabbing victim didn't know she was married when they started dating. So, she has an MO.
Huh? Oh, okay. The guy, like, in the beginning.
Yeah.
Okay.
Fareed or whatever his name was.
Paul didn't know about Fareed, is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay. So they were explaining how she stabbed it, and he was like, basically like, I'm so sorry. Like, what? He went on to...
I love the fact that he's, like, not concerned about the stabbing. It's like, wait, she's married?
Yeah. Well, he went on to explain, like, this can't be right. Like, I've been to her apartment. Like, we've stayed weekends and nights together. Yeah.
It wasn't the brother.
No.
She made her husband move out to have her boyfriend over?
He said he finds it very unlikely that there wouldn't be a trace of a man
They scrubbed the apartment.
in someone's home. Because there was like no clothes, no photos, no nothing. And and so basically she does have a brother, but she lied and used him as an excuse, and he is also mentally ill, which is kind of fucked.
Aww.
Yeah. But that was the excuse that she got Paul, her husband, out of the house to host, if that's the right term, her boyfriend, who was Nelson, over for last...
Oh boy's packing up his entire life in a U-Haul, like, every other weekend, or whatever the visitation schedule is, for her to have her boyfriend over.
Yep. So, that was fucked, right?
Very.
Well, so, in February 2004, Sheila was charged with assault, criminal possession of a weapon, and attempted murder.
Okay.
She insisted she was innocent, though. She declined the plea deal of... What?
She said she was innocent?
She said she was innocent. She stood on it. She declined a plea deal of 5 years, and she changed her story once again.
To what now?
She faced 25 years, and so she went after the insanity plea.
Of course she did. I mean, maybe.
She said she doesn't even remember what happened that night. She said that it was bizarre because she was frantic and confused, and that she had been triggered by something. She has no idea what, but she was in pain and had a lot of tension. And so,
Okay.
and now 16 years, however long later, she'd been in therapy forever, she now knows that it was due to her PTSD, due to the war zone that she lived in when she was 10 years old in Iran.
Okay, I can't make assumptions because I've never lived in a war zone. I can't imagine the hell that it goes through.
Right. But she said basically that's why she doesn't remember that night. She doesn't know what triggered her, but something did, and she guesses that's why it happened of some sort. So, Anyway, Paul gets called to the stand during this, and he goes to bat for her. He was like, I love her. She was sick. She is sick. She needs help. She doesn't need prison time. I don't want her to get 25 years, like, obviously.
The stabbing victim
Yes.
is going to bat for her during her trial.
And his family. His parents. Yeah. They were all write letters to the judge and was like, hey, don't give her 25 years. Like, something's wrong. Like, she needs help, but we don't think this was, like, a malicious thing. Like, it was more of a mental thing, maybe, or something. So, I thought it was really nice that he did that. They forgave her. They think she's sick and all that. So, in February of 2024, I think it was February 19th, 2024, Judge Dickerson applauded Paul and his family's compassion. But he didn't buy it. He was like, nah. He said Sheila lied over and over and over, stabbed him 3 times, refused to get him help, and was basically like, you're done. You're done. Who was that girl on TikTok? You're done.
So, I would almost see, like, if it was, he was attacking her, and she went into, like, a self-preservation triggered moment and stabbed him then. But this is a sexual game where she stabs him twice, pretends to call for help, obviously did not. She
Nope.
called Nelson.
Mm-hmm.
And then loads him in a car to, quote unquote, get him help.
Yeah.
Drives past a hospital that I'm seriously doubting at this point was accidental.
Yeah.
And stabs him a third time. That's not flashbacks to a war zone from your childhood.
Yeah. But I don't know. We're not psychologists, so
We're
we can't
not.
presume.
I'm just saying, if I was on the jury, I would have suspicions.
Well, Sheila was sentenced to 25 years without the possibility of parole for attempted murder of Paul Christos.
Okay.
So
I mean, I get that, like, he went to bat for her.
that's wild for an attempted murder. Even she says that.
We've seen less
She's
for
like-
successful murder.
Yeah, she was like, there's people who got, like, actually killed.
But I also feel like that with attempted murder, your actions had no bearing on the outcome itself. Like, you intended to kill him when you stabbed him 3 times.
Yeah.
So the
But
fact...
did she? Because she said, like, they had access to butcher knives, other knives. Why would she use a pared knife?
I don't care if it's tweezers. If you plunge it into someone's chest 3 times, there's intent there.
Yeah.
So I'm not mad about the fact that she got time for this.
Yeah. Interesting, right?
It's very interesting. I'm very confused on the call itself.
What do you mean?
That someone's going into my neighbor's house to attack them. Like, who went into whose apartment or house or whatever it was?
Oh, do you think Sheila called?
No. I was a neighbor.
Uh-huh.
Who went into whose house?
So you say that, right? You thought I was done. Wrong!
Oh, shit.
So, like I said, Sheila and Nelson had been on and off for like a year. She claims that he called her that night and asked to come over when the stabbing had happened, and that's why she called him and was like, hey, not a good time. Obviously. From what I heard or read, I did not see that she basically was like, hey, don't come over, I just stabbed my husband, because obviously he didn't know.
That's a hell of a phone call.
But just was like, basically not a good time, can't do it, blah, blah, blah. However, Nelson says that they had been broken off. Like, he had broken things off with Sheila. Because he wanted to be with another woman, Annalisa Raimundo, who was another co-worker at Purdue Pharma. They ended up getting engaged in...
Engaged?
Yeah. So, he was cheating on Annalisa, which is kind of fucked. He says he wasn't. She says he was. Somehow,
Okay, so one is married and dating someone else for the second time, mind you.
And granted, Nelson and her both say that they were on and off. So,
Okay.
I don't know when he met, or like when him and Annalisa ended up meeting.
I was going to say, how long had they been separated before he met someone else and got engaged?
I think it was kind of during. So,
Okay, it's messy.
it's messy. And they all work for Purdue Pharma, right? So, because Annalisa is also...
They're not busy enough at work, is what I'm hearing.
They ended up getting engaged sometime in 2002, right? Well, on November 8th, 2002, Annalisa was actually brutally attacked and murdered in her apartment in Stamford, Connecticut. So this was like however many months before all of this, right? Like they were just like, oh,
The fiance.
yeah. So this was the husband of Sheila was attacked and stabbed in Westchester, New York. What did I say? In March of 2003, right? So they noticed Nelson, they find all these things out and ended up talking to him. Well, fun fact, that's where Travis the chimp was from. We already talked about that. Anyway, the Westchester, New York Police Department and Stamford, Connecticut Police Department began working together because they found this odd connection between that. Like, that's
Yeah,
weird,
it's like a weird love, not triangle, square? Love square?
Well, I guess it would be a triangle since the other two parties didn't know about each other.
Sure.
You know? I don't know. Who do I know? I just work here. So they ended up learning about the murder of Annalisa, and they pretty much had little to no evidence about Annalisa's murder, which was very odd. But they did have this strange 911 call, which is
Okay.
what we heard. And when the Westchester detectives got all the information, got all this stuff, they heard the call, and were like, huh, that's fucking Sheila.
Sheila was the 911 caller
Yeah.
in her ex-boyfriend's fiance's murder.
Hypothetically. Allegedly.
Allegedly.
Allegedly. But they were basically like, that's Sheila's ass. So, got him. But it was a really short and sweet call, obviously, but they were very certain. But Sheila was already in jail at this point. So, because remember,
she got 25 years,
Yeah.
so she called from jail.
No. Remember, this was in November of 2002.
Okay, so she's out.
No, baby, listen. She is out, but this is in November of 2002. Annalisa's murder. The whole reason she got caught and things like that was in March of 2003 because of her husband.
Before she got arrested
Yes.
for that.
So
Okay.
they had no idea about any of this until the Nelson thing. Because when Annalisa was murdered, Nelson was their prime suspect.
It's always the boyfriend and the husband.
Yes. So, but that's how it ended up. I'll tell you in a second how they got there. But basically, they were like, that's fucking Sheila's ass. But she was already in jail, so cool. We're gonna make an airtight case.
Mm-hmm.
So,
your witness isn't going anywhere.
Yeah. They had that time, and they had time to learn more about Annalisa Raimundo. She was 32 years old when she was murdered. And like Sheila, she was a daughter of immigrants who came from the Philippines. And again, like Sheila, she was also the daughter of people who were also in healthcare. They were in the medical profession as well.
Okay.
Annalisa had actually graduated from Harvard and landed that job at Purdue Pharma. So insanely beautiful, insanely intelligent, like so sad. But that's where she began dating Nelson, right? It's so fucked. So fast forward to the evening of her being murdered, Annalisa was stabbed 9 times. There was blood everywhere. It was completely soaked. And apparently this was like during the day. Like,
was it a paring knife?
Broad daylight. I don't know. Like broad daylight. Right? Like
inside her apartment?
Yeah.
Okay.
But it was like around lunchtime-ish, which is how they ended up finding this. So anyways, blood everywhere. And that evening of her murder, Nelson walks up to her apartment. There's cops everywhere, tape everywhere, and they're like, hey, what's going on? Or he's like, hey, what's going on? And they're like, who the fuck are you? Oh, you're the boyfriend. Well, again, they're like, why aren't you crying? Why aren't you reacting? All these things, you're shady. And also, you have a fresh wound or a fresh injury on your hand.
I understand that there's scientific proof towards like body language and how people respond to questions and traumatic events that they read stuff into.
Yeah.
But people are so vastly not defending anyone in this case because everyone seems like they're a little fucked. But you and I don't respond in the typical way to bad news or to traumatic events or emergencies. Mm-hmm. So I'm on board with you.
Yes.
To not judge someone based on how they respond.
Yeah. So that's kind of how I was. He was not acting all torn up. He wasn't crying. And he had the fresh injury on his hand. And we all know in a lot of stabbings that your hand slips over and usually hits the blade or hits the hilt. And there's some sort of injury. So they're like, ding, ding, ding.
Right.
Where have you been? Like, where have you been? Because you're suspicious as hell, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, they ended up, he had an alibi. He was at work. So, Purdue Pharmacy, you know, a fucking pharmacy scientific area.
There's cameras, there's badge in, badge out.
Grade A cameras. Mm-hmm. And he was there. It was not Nelson. They confirmed his confirmed his alibi, rather. And all that. So, they did ask him, was like, hey, do you have any idea who this could be? He was like, I have no idea. I've been at work. I do have 2 crazy exes, though. Like, 2 Cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs exes. Maybe it was them, right? Didn't list Sheila.
He had 2 crazy exes other than the one who had stabbed her husband 3 times.
Yeah. Well, again, this was before, so he didn't know this part. But, I mean, Sheila was obviously obsessed with everyone. I mean, because if she chose you, you were her person, I guess.
Victim.
So, he ended up basically giving 2 names of 2 other females. They got pretty much weeded out quickly.
I'm also starting to judge Nelson a little bit by the company he keeps. Just saying.
Yeah. Well, so, I guess at this point, they were like, who called 911? It's a neighbor.
Mm-hmm.
So they go around, all the neighbors' voices don't match, no one says they called, blah, blah, blah. So they end up tracing it, and it's like down the road at a payphone. Like a nearby payphone.
The good old payphone days.
Yeah. But weeks after the murder, there was nowhere to go. They did catch a piece of blood on the sink handle
Of her apartment. Of the victim's apartment.
Annalisa's apartment. Because it was blood everywhere. There was like almost like a trail like leading up into it. Like the killer went and cleaned off pretty much.
Yeah. Without any stab wounds, there's going to be a lot of blood.
They analyzed the blood and they had found that small spot on the sink. They realized it wasn't Annalisa's, but they had nothing to compare it to. I mean, I guess they compared it to Nelson, but it wasn't his. So, while they were in the midst of working with Westchester and Stanford and all this, they were like, hey, let's check Sheila's work records. And she had taken an extended lunch break that day. Well, Sheila says that she every day took an extended lunch break. Every single day. She was depressed, about divorce and her affair, and that's why she took them, basically. So,
okay.
They ended up, she had her DNA from her attempted murder of her husband.
Yeah, because with most felonies, they will collect DNA.
So they tested it, and it came back to Sheila. So.
Explain.
She's already in prison, so blah, blah, blah. They charged her again in 2012 for this murder, basically. She was on trial once again. And she had already been in prison like for 8 years. So then she decides to represent herself.
Oh, God.
Yeah. She said she didn't trust it. You know, that whole thing. So, Paul had learned during this that Paul, her husband, had gotten some tea from Sheila during their marriage about a Jack, Melissa, and an Annalise love triangle at work, and told him all about this tea and juice, about how, like, what could Jack do? Why would Jack look at Annalisa like this? And why
was Jack Nelson?
Yeah.
So changed his name, but not hers.
So we had Melissa as Sheila and Annalisa as herself, and basically was like, why would he pick her? And Paul,
she's telling her husband,
none the wiser, was giving advice to her about, like, the drama at work that was actually about herself.
Poor Paul.
Yeah. So, Sheila ends up questioning Paul, like, and a juror even said, like, it was almost like a couple's agreement. Like, I mean, argument. Couple's argument, rather, not agreement. She called Nelson to the stand. Sheila said that he never broke up with her. And it was weak evidence about the 911 call because it doesn't sound like her. Everyone around her says it does not sound like her.
So, and you said that call was made from a payphone.
Uh-huh.
So, like, voice recognition was not a thing then, I'm assuming.
But they had a voice analyst who went through it and basically was like, I think it was a 63% match. It was kind of weak, but
yeah,
still, it was
enough for suspicion, but not maybe conviction.
Mm-hmm. But the blood. Mm-hmm. So we're here now. I mean, the blood is as quick as it can get. But Sheila discounts that as well because she says that it was cross-contaminated somehow. Because,
in the lab, or like that she was in their apartment?
No, like it was in the lab because it had been resubmitted to the lab. I don't know where it went. No one knows where it went, but it was resubmitted to the lab, and she thinks it somehow got contaminated, and that was the only piece of evidence linking her to Annalisa. And I was like, oh.
Stranger things have happened, but with her track record, I don't have faith in that. So in February of 2012, the jury took a day to get a verdict, and they decided to sentence 50 years, well, not they, but you know what I mean. She got 50 years in prison, which would start after her 25 years of attempted murder. So she would be completing about 75 years. Okay.
So in 2017 is when, So she was thinking about getting out in 2075, and she would be 106 years old.
So it's basically a life sentence for her.
Yeah. So.
Convicted on the blood droplet.
They convicted her
Essentially.
for pretty much all of it. Because they had the blood, they had the previous, the connection, I guess.
At any
all that.
point, did she say why she made that call?
To
911.
She said it wasn't her. She said it wasn't her voice. It doesn't sound like her. It was not her. She wasn't even in the area. She said she was on the way to New York. This was in Stamford. And she said she made phone calls. So her cell phone providers should be able to...
Substantiate that.
Apparently not. I don't know if they didn't ask for it or they couldn't find it or what.
But also, like, this is years later, so maybe.
Maybe. 2017. Or 2012, rather.
Starting to think that maybe Sheila's brother's not the only one in the family with some issues.
No. Oh, did you think I was done?
Oh my God!
Okay.
She killed someone in prison? What's happening?
So, in 2017, 13 years later, two detectives from Windsor, New York. It was 11 months before Annalise, who was 32-year-old. Another 32-year-old woman, Nancy Smith. Nancy Smith's parents...
Here's your normal name.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Nancy. R.I.P.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. Nancy's parents got a call from none other than her boss.
At Purdue Pharmaceuticals?
No, but close. And she was a no-call, no-show. This was very unlike her. They went to her house, and her car was there. Well, the parents had, like, a garage opener, so they were like, okay, let's go inside. And they found in the living room her covered in blankets and pillows, and she had been stabbed to death. So, they called 911, and detectives said it was in disarray, like the altercation, like there was like shit everywhere, basically. She had been hit in the head, strangled, and stabbed. The knife had actually been left at the scene. There was no forced entry, no robbery, and apparently Nancy was very safety conscious as well, so they were convinced that whoever was at her door, she let in because she knew them and stuff. But
How did she know Sheila?
But basically, whoever remained at large because they could not figure that out, who it was. However, former coworker was Sheila Davalloo at a healthcare facility, Oxford Insurance. And so they were like, Nancy knows Sheila. What the fuck? This is now number 3. Like,
people who know Sheila don't do well.
Yeah. Like, again, she gets obsessed with motherfuckers and stuff. So, they were doing all this, like, inventory of, like, Nancy's house and evidence and things like that, where they find a calendar. And there's a date marked off for Nelson / CT. So, Nelson, Connecticut, let's just say.
Okay.
Nelson, at the time of this, in 2017, lived in North Carolina somewhere. And he said he did not know Nancy. He did not know who she was and was very reluctant to talk about Sheila and everything. He wanted to get past it. He was over it, I'm sure. Ended up being Nelson was a band that Sheila had actually attended to see in Connecticut. It was just a weird coincidence. And they did find tickets. They found pictures or whatever else. And the DNA at Nancy's was not Sheila's. So she was not charged for that. But they were basically like, oh, okay, she's the killer. So in 2025, she was done with her 25 years, or she will be done with her 25 years for the attempted murder and will begin serving her 50 years in Connecticut. But many experts say that she is a master manipulator. She is very self-serving. Anything she does for herself. The way she reacts is for herself and things like that. So.
I mean, it definitely sounds that way. I mean, she was married twice and having affairs without telling people that she was married. Mm-hmm. One attempted murder, one convicted murder. So, yeah, she's got issues to say the very least.
So, fun fact, she was the only female up until this episode on Snapped to be viewed or to be on there twice.
She was on Snapped twice?
Twice. She's the only female killer to be on Snapped twice. First for her husband, and then the second time for
her boyfriend's fiance.
Annalisa. Yeah. So, just fun fact of the day, I guess. I did watch her Snapped episode. I think they morphed both of them together. It was interesting. It was on Peacock.
Peacock.
So you should definitely listen to that.
I will.
But, you know, I love to end with a quote.
Uh-oh.
It's simple. But Stephen Dobbin said, "Actions have consequences. Ignorance about the nature of those actions does not free a person from responsibility for those consequences."
I like that.
Okay.
So, we hope that you guys have enjoyed this episode of Nefarious, and we look forward to you joining us next time with our next case.
Okay, love you. Bye.